There are people who've been running around this country for over a year now, talking about their elbows, flapping about. I just don't find that impressive.
Mr. Jivani, who I don't believe is the trade critic for the opposition, certainly not the Minister of International Trade, nor the Prime Minister.
And that's why I'm going to Washington, D.C.
In the wake of securing the Conservative leadership and in an attempt to go on the political offense against Mark Carney, the Conservatives have made an extremely bold play, using the ace up their sleeve that they have been sleeping on for almost a year. They have sent Jamil Jivani down to Washington, D.C. to accomplish what Mark Carney and a team of liberals have been unable to do since he took office: secure a trade deal with the United States. Let's take a look.
I'm on my way to Washington, D.C., and I want to explain to you, the Canadian people, exactly why, because you're probably going to hear about it. I'm going to Washington because I want to help Prime Minister Mark Carney be successful in negotiating a trade deal with the United States. Now, that might sound counterintuitive because I am a principled conservative. He is our liberal Prime Minister. But the reality is that this is not a partisan issue. CUSMA and trade with the United States is so important to the Canadian economy and to our future as an independent, self-reliant nation that conservatives and liberals don't need to fight over this at all. In fact, we need to work together. The leader of the Conservative Party, Pierre Poilievre, has said as much. He has offered help from conservatives to the Liberal government on this issue, and I'm acting on that. In my opinion, this is not about posturing or politics. This is about business and workers. This is about unions and entrepreneurs. This is about whether we have a growing economy with stability for investment and opportunity for our young people, or whether our economy is perpetually in a state of uncertainty. I'm kind of sick and tired of the politics on this issue. I'm sick and tired of the posturing and the virtue signaling. I'm sick and tired of people being worried about what someone's going to call you on Facebook or on social media comments, what the media might say. The reality is that there are people suffering right now in our country because of the state of our economy. And in as much as we want Canada to be as strong and independent as possible, the reality is that 3/4 of our exports go to the United States. And if we want an economy that is good for our young people, if we want an economy that supports public services for seniors in our communities, we've got to work with the Americans. There are people who've been running around this country for over a year now, talking about their elbows, flapping about. I just don't find that impressive. I don't find it serious. I take this issue seriously. And as a guy who went to law school in the United States and has a strong network there, I think I have something to offer to help build bridges of communication between our two countries, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm alarmed when I see things like the talking about China and communist governments and doing more business with them. I get alarmed when I see announcements of electric vehicles now being imported into Canada while we have a crisis in our auto industry. I get alarmed in my home community when I see museums in Oshawa, like the Tank Museum or the Auto Museum, offering free admission to GM employees to do everything they can to just stand in solidarity with people whose lives have been turned upside down because of the economic uncertainty, the tariffs, and the lack of a good trade relationship with our biggest trading partner. So yeah, I say this to you knowing what's about to come my way. I know what all the critics are going to say, and I know what all the frothing, elbow-waving, anti-American activists are about to say about me. But I just don't care. I care more about you. I care more about the Canadian people, the people who want a future in this country and know that we need serious leadership, the people who believe that you elect people to do what's right and to stand up for you and fight for you above any kind of partisanship. I took this job because I thought there was important work that needed to be done in our country. And I thought that on behalf of the great people of Bowmanville, Oshawa North, I would have a chance to do some great work. And that's my motivation. So no matter what you hear, no matter what they say, I just want you to hear directly from me. I think you deserve good leadership in this country. And I think you deserve people who are going to cut through all the noise, cut through all the posturing and the virtue signaling, and just try to deliver something good for you and your kids. And to me, that's what a trade deal with the United States promises. It promises more stability so that we can grow our economy and that our country can be strong and awesome and live up to its enormous potential. And I think that's what we all want. And that's why I'm going to Washington, D.C.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's Jamil Jivani. If you haven't heard him speak before, he knows how to speak very well. He used to have a radio show. As he mentioned, he went to Yale Law School down in the United States. And everyone probably knows, but just in case you don't, the reason why Jamil is the ace up the sleeve of the Conservative Party is because he has a very, very, very special relationship with somebody down there close to Donald Trump. And that somebody is Vice President J.D. Vance. This is a picture of Jamil Jivani and J.D. Vance way back when they were in law school, and he was down in the United States, and they were best friends down there, according to Jamil. He wrote an op-ed back in 2020 where he talked about J.D. Vance and their relationship. And here is Jamil and J.D. Vance just this year, or last year rather. And Jamil was even invited down to the inauguration of Donald Trump. So that relationship is obviously alive and well and very strong. So here's the interesting thing. Like, a lot of people have asked us, why doesn't Pierre go down to Washington to try to broker a trade deal with Donald Trump? And our response has always been, because Pierre doesn't necessarily have the authority to get it done. Well, not that he doesn't necessarily have the authority. He doesn't have the authority. He's not the prime minister. But more than that, the media was going to crucify him for being, trying to undermine Mark Carney, trying to usurp his authority, this type of thing. But now might be the right time. It really might be the right time, because Mark Carney has tried and failed and tried and failed and tried and failed. At least that's the optics that they're putting out there, in order to secure a deal with Donald Trump. And recently, Mark Carney has essentially given the political finger to Donald Trump in Davos and shortly afterwards. And he even said, well, who cares? I don't care about talking to Donald Trump. So he seems to have no interest in getting one done, despite the fact that all of us remember that that was one of his key electoral promises, right? So this is fascinating to me, because now, if Mark Carney is displaying no desire to get a deal with Donald Trump done, that also could be interpreted as he is unable to get a deal with Donald Trump done. And what would happen if Jamil Jivani goes down and, a week or two later comes back and says, here you go, Mr. Carney. Conservatives got it done. Here's the trade proposal, drops tariffs, brings our countries closer together. This is what the Conservatives can do, and this is what we've been offering to do. This is what Pierre has been offering to do for months. If only Mark Carney would have collaborated. How would that look? How would that look on Mark Carney and the Liberal government? And more importantly, as the Liberals seem like they're gearing up for an election to try to steal a majority, how would that look to swing voters out there? The ones that bought into the hype that Mark Carney was the master negotiator. He was the one to deal with Donald Trump. He was the only one that was going to be able to, quote unquote, handle Donald Trump, as Mark Carney said repeatedly. How would that look? Well, it would probably look pretty bad, which is why when Mark Carney was confronted with this today, he didn't seem too pleased.
Prime Minister, what do you make of Jamil Jivani going down to Washington? Do you endorse Jamil Jivani going to Washington?
We have extensive contacts with the U.S. administration, constant contacts with the U.S. administration. Minister LeBlanc gave a briefing to Mr. Jivani, who I don't believe is the trade critic for the opposition, certainly not the Minister of International Trade, nor the Prime Minister.
So what do you think he's going down to?
I think it might have something to do with all of you.
So a bunch of flippant remarks from Mark Carney, but I thought you were the one who wanted to collaborate and work with other parties. But this is the issue. His ego has taken over. And so if somebody else is able to do something that he was unable to do, remember he said, well, we have a team of people and we have extensive contacts with the administration. Right. But you haven't gotten a deal. If you have such extensive contacts, why aren't they still working on it? Why aren't you giving Canadians the impression that they're working on it? You're trying to sell this complete fabrication that, oh, I'm going to snap my fingers and, we're going to just displace all of the U.S. trade with other countries. Don't worry, Canadians. Jamil said in his video, over 75% of our trade is with the United States. Every other country combined that we trade with makes up the remainder of the 25%. It's peanuts. And this is what Mark Carney and the Liberals are not honest with Canadians about. You can't just snap your fingers and then all of a sudden, oh, yay, all that trade that is going back and forth between the United States and Canada, yeah, that's now going overseas. It's not going to happen. It's night and day not going to happen because of how much more expensive it is. Like, all you hear about when you're hearing about these corporations and companies that are starting up in Europe is they want to get into the US market. Why? Because it's one of the most lucrative in the world. And we're sitting here trying to say, well, let's get out of the most lucrative market in the world. What kind of economist believes that's a good idea? Now, doesn't mean you don't diversify your trade. You're always looking for new trading partners. But it doesn't mean you abandon the ones that you have. And again, it's not Donald Trump that you're trading with. It's businesses within the United States that you're trading with. People that are also trying to make a living. People who also rely on goods from Canada. People who probably aren't happy about the tariffs, just as we're not happy. So just imagine if the Conservatives who've been knocking on the door saying, Mr. Carney, we'd like to help with you. We'd like to collaborate with you. We're trying to help. Can you imagine what would happen if all of a sudden they secured a banger of a trade deal from the United States due to that ace up their sleeve? Well, ladies and gentlemen, Jamil may come back and hand Pierre a royal flush as they head into the spring. And as Brian Lilley says, anything can happen. Voters are fickle and campaigns matter. And wouldn't that be something to take into the campaign?